Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, can I begin my comments this afternoon by congratulating you on your return to the Speaker's chair with the overwhelming endorsement of members of this House. Mr Speaker, I want to congratulate your assistant, the Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Chester Burrows, Lindsay Tish, who has been a long-serving and very loyal member of this Parliament and continues his work as your assistant, and also the new man in the team, the Honourable Trevor Mallard, who I know will bring his own style to the work. Mr Speaker, I want to also congratulate the Clerk's Office, the Governor-General's Office and VCO for the work that they've done to organise the ceremonies of the past 2 days that remind us of the deep ties we have to long-standing democracy in this country. Mr Speaker, I also need to acknowledge our two movers and seconders of the address and reply debate today, both Chris Bishop and Barbara Kuriga. My colleague Tim Grosser was remarking before that it showed, and I think he's absolutely right, why the National Party is so strong. Firstly, the urban Liberal, Chris Bishop, giving a great speech to reflect on his views about where this country might go in the time that he's in Parliament, and then Barbara coming in to speak as the quintessential rural person, very, very connected to the needs of those rural communities. And I think when you put those two together, you start to see some of the breadth of the National Party, and I know that other maiden speeches will expand that in days ahead. I also want to congratulate David Seymour for that speech. I think what you demonstrated to us all was the reason why the National Party sits so comfortably in a governance arrangement with the ACT Party, and I'm sure that your contribution to this House will be considerable over the years to come. Now, Mr Speaker, I didn't want to go on to discussing the New Zealand First contribution quite so quickly in my limited time today, but the member over there invites me to do it. And he sits there saying, it's a jack-up, it's a jack-up. And he's only saying that because he's saying, I did so well, but I've got nothing, Mr Speaker. And then there was the issue. Then there was the issue of him saying, well, look what happened. The Prime Minister's shoring himself up by 14 new members and a whole lot of other people exiting. Mr Speaker, this is a guy who exited his entire caucus on 3 occasions during his time here in Parliament. And it's so bad that one of his returning members, the Honourable Mr Ron Mark, was not even known to the Deputy Leader, who earlier today described him, yesterday it was in fact, describing him as Don Clark. Well, Don Clark is not available to the All Blacks. He's certainly not in this Parliament, Mr Speaker. I want to turn now to the substance of what I want to say, which is support for the Prime Minister's motion put before the House in this address and reply debate. Mr Speaker, I was disappointed by the contribution from the Labor Party, but not surprised. Not surprised. Because if it is boiled down and analysed, it's more of what we've had for the last 6 years. If only the ungrateful voter had voted for them, everything would be okay. If only the ungrateful voter had recognised that everything they said was good and everything we did was bad, then everything would be okay. If only the ungrateful voter would stop thinking about what's best for them and their lives and start thinking about what the Labor Party thinks is best for them and their lives, then everything would be okay. And I've got to say, Mr Speaker, that while this government going into a third term is very, very conscious of showing any signs of arrogance whatsoever, there is a fundamental arrogance in that Labor Party position that will not change with a change of leader. It needs a deep change of the culture of that party. Mr Speaker, it would be easy to sort of spend a lot of time today talking about the leadership challenge, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. As long as that attitude prevails, they will not connect with New Zealanders. What connects with New Zealanders is the sort of things that the government has set out in the speech from the throne today. The idea that we should constantly strive to improve New Zealanders' incomes. And in that regard, we've heard a lot of comment from other parties about how, for example, you should perhaps devalue the dollar because that might somehow make things easier for people. Well, the question there is, where on earth is there a place where the purchasing power of one economy is enhanced by another economy deciding to reduce its own purchasing power? And this, Mr Speaker, that is the problem that we've got inside other parties here trying to comment on that. The reality is that in the next couple of years, the average wage in New Zealand will climb to $62,000. It's climbing at a rate that is ahead of inflation in this country. And there is a reason for that. It's because the government has policies that not of themselves create work, not of themselves create export opportunities, but facilitate the people out there who take risks on a daily basis to build businesses, to seek out markets and to sell their products. And along the way, provide opportunities for other New Zealanders to enjoy that success through higher incomes. That's a pretty simple thing. And then there is the issue of the child poverty, which we have said we want to do a lot more about. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think it is only fair to look at some relativities in that regard. If you listen to the Green Party, then everything is all bad, and there's no hope for anybody in this country in that regard. If you listen to the Labour Party, they're going to hold us to account. Well, all they need to do is to watch what's going to happen as we see more people exiting benefits and going into work. There can be no denying that life for a working family is a lot easier for a family that lives on a benefit. And if the only answer you've got is to say, well, make it all easier for those people on a benefit by lifting them up, then you start to persecute the people who work. So, sir, there will be some very interesting debates in this House over that particular issue. The other thing that has come up constantly over the last 6 months has been housing in New Zealand. And it's staggering that we've had the Labour Party today come out and say that they will not support change to the Resource Management Act. The Green Party come out today and say they will not support change to the Resource Management Act. Well, it's very simple. If there isn't more land available for subdivision, if there isn't better use of existing land, and there aren't the artificial costs that are put into the cost of using that land removed by taking away laws that put those costs in place, then there is no attack on the issue of low-cost housing. So I challenge the Labour Party to think for themselves beyond the rhetoric that has been the mantra for the last 6 years and start thinking seriously about the issue of housing costs. Mr. Speaker, this government will do it. And no one should underestimate either the need for a government to get its own finances in shape, to be able to show a picture that says we do not have rampant runaway expenditure by a government. We do not have expenditure plans that go beyond the means of a government, because that reflects directly in interest rates. And it is an easy calculation that every time an interest rate goes up 1 whole point, then that's an extra $1,000 a year on whatever your mortgage amount is that has to be found. And if we're looking at $300,000 and $400,000 mortgages, which is in many cases the norm or bigger, then that is a large amount of money that can be altered or taken out of a person's income each week by virtue of bad government policy. Mr. Speaker, the Home Start program will see a change in the way developers put product into the market, couple that with some RMA changes and a desire by the government to see more of this housing built, then we will see, I think, sir, some real movement in that regard. I should speak a little bit about the other issue that's come up repeatedly this afternoon, that of what New Zealand might do in response to the Islamic State activities in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, I can only repeat what the Prime Minister has said over and over. There will be a discussion among the political parties. There will be a debate in the House. There will be a considered position that represents New Zealand's position. And I want to say, I watched the Q&A program last week. Those 4 Labour leader aspirants were all appalling on this subject because they were scaremongering where they need not scaremonger. The New Zealand Defence Forces, sir, are extremely capable, and they are capable across a range of activities that might be useful in the suppression of this appalling organisation that is so barbaric and repulsive to us. But it needs to be something that is well considered, and, sir, it will be. Thank you.
I call Kelvin Davis.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, e te kaiwhakahaere o tēnei